Hey, I'm Pastor Dave. Thank you for joining us. It's week 4 of our 6 Questions of Jesus series. So if you've missed a couple of the weeks, go back, check them out. They're on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Let's get into this. So have you ever traveled and had to live out of a suitcase? You know what I'm talking about, where it's like you stuff as much as you can into the suitcase, and then you get to wherever you're going, and it's always kind of a burden to live out of a suitcase. You're carrying your stuff with. Like when I'm at home, my clothes can just stay in the closet. But when you're traveling and living out of a suitcase, you've got to pack and carry the stuff with you, and then inevitably you pack as much as you can. You fill your suitcase. You've got it as full as it can be, and you still wish you had some other stuff once you're there. Our suitcases are full, and I say that not just talking about traveling, but I mean kind of in life. Like our suitcases are full. Like we carry around a lot of baggage, don't we? We have a lot of hurt from the past. There are things in our life that we wish we could unpack. We wish we could live more authentic or open and honest, but we sometimes we try to hide stuff away that we're ashamed of, and we're carrying that burden of shame. We live with a lot of disappointment. We live with just things from our past that we can't seem to shed. And it's not all negative. Sometimes our lives are full of, sometimes our suitcases do have joy. Sometimes there is a lot of things, like love that we want to be able to unpack and give. There is hope that we carry around with us. So it's not all negative, but I think that often in life we have a full suitcase. And if you've ever traveled and lived out of a suitcase, kind of the burden. And I think sometimes we feel like we're living out of a suitcase, like we're carrying extra weight with us. In Matthew 11, Jesus says this: "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So there's this story in Matthew 20, and Jesus is kind of out along the countryside, and he is fairly well known at this point. Like a lot of people have heard of Jesus and are expecting to meet him and hear him preach and maybe be healed from him. And so whenever he goes places, they're just crowds. And so we pick the story up in Matthew chapter 20. It says, "As Jesus and the disciples left the town of Jericho, a large crowd followed behind. 2 blind men were sitting beside the road. When they heard that Jesus was coming that way, they began shouting, 'Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us.'" Now, I've never been blind, and I haven't even, that I can recall, I don't recall ever even having like a friend or somebody who was completely blind and impaired that way. But I imagine that if you are blind, especially in the time of this story with, Braille wasn't invented until the 1800s. And a lot of things that we have in our modern societies to help those who may be blind didn't exist then. And so I imagine if you're blind at that period in history, you probably felt like a burden. You probably felt like you couldn't contribute much. You were really reliant on other people. And so these guys, they must have heard that Jesus was coming their direction. and they begin shouting, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." Now, there's more to the story, and we'll get to it in a minute, but it's interesting, I think, that they don't just say, "Hey, Jesus," or "Jesus." They don't even call him the Son of God or the Messiah. They say, "Son of David." So why are they using that title for Jesus? Why are they calling Jesus Son of David? Where does that come from, and how do they know how to use it? So 2 Samuel 7, this is the origins of the title they use for Jesus. So in 2 Samuel, King David is on the throne. He's been on the throne for a while. And so we're going to pick up and start reading in that chapter. When King David was settled in his palace and the Lord had given him rest from all the surrounding enemies, the king summoned Nathan the prophet. "Lord," David said, "I'm living in a beautiful cedar palace, but the ark of God is out there in a tent." So if you remember, when Moses helped set the Israelites free, and they had the Ark of the Covenant and this golden box which housed the 10 Commandments and some other stuff, it was in the tabernacle, the traveling temple that was a giant tent apparatus, and it would move from place to place as they traveled. Well, now the Israelites are settled in the promised land, and David, having been king for a bit now, he's got a palace and he's settled, and God has given him rest, it says. And so now he's like, we need to build a temple. Like, it seemed like the next logical step in David's mind. Nathan replied to the king, "Go ahead and do whatever you have in mind, for the Lord is with you." But that same night, the Lord said to Nathan, "Go and tell my servant David, this is what the Lord has declared. Are you the one to build a house for me to live in? I've never lived in a house. From the day I brought the Israelites out of Egypt until this very day, I have always moved from one place to another with a tent and a tabernacle as my dwelling. Yet no matter where I have gone with the Israelites, I have never once complained to Israel's tribal leaders, the shepherds of my people Israel. I have never asked them, 'Why haven't you built me a beautiful cedar house?' Now go and say to my servant David, this is what the Lord of heaven's armies has declared. I took you from tending sheep in the pasture and selected you to be the leader of my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone, and I have destroyed all your enemies before your eyes. Now I will make your name as famous as anyone who has ever lived on the earth, and I will provide you a homeland for my people Israel, planting them in a secure place where they will never be disturbed. Evil nations won't oppress them as they have done in the past, starting from the time I appointed judges to rule over my people Israel. And I will give you rest from all your enemies. Furthermore, declares the Lord declares that he will make a house for you, a dynasty of kings. For when you die and are buried with your ancestors, I will raise up one of your descendants, your own offspring, and I will make his kingdom strong. He is the one who will build a house, a temple for my name, and I will secure his royal throne forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. If he sins, I will correct and discipline him with the rod like any father would do. But my favor will not be taken from him as I took it from Saul, whom I removed from your sight. Your house and your kingdom will continue before me for all time, and your throne will be secure forever." So Nathan went back to David and told him everything the Lord had said in this vision. Then King David went in and sat before the Lord and prayed, "Who am I, O sovereign Lord, and what is my family that you've brought me this far? And now, sovereign Lord, in addition to everything else, you speak of giving your servant a lasting dynasty. Do you deal with everyone this way, O sovereign Lord? What more can I say to you? You know that what your servant is really like, sovereign Lord. Because of your promise and according to your will, you have done all these great things and have made them known to your servant. How great you are, O sovereign Lord. There is no one like you." And I'll stop there. So King David is like, I want to build a temple. I'm the king, and I've got my own, my own castle, and now it's time for the presence of God to have a place to dwell. And it's not a bad idea, but God tells David, no, it's going to be one of your descendants that's going to build the temple. But God doesn't just disappoint David and say, no, you can't do the thing you wanted to do. He says, you're not the one. It will be done by one of your sons. But here's what I want to give you. I'm going to establish your kingdom forever, a dynasty of kings. And so God enacts this, what we call the Davidic covenant. And so for all time, David has this dynasty of kings is what God has promised. And then we can fast forward hundreds of years to Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah. And in chapter 23, he says, "For the time is coming, says the Lord, when I will raise up a righteous descendant from King David's line. He will be a king who rules with wisdom. He will do what is just and right throughout the land, and this will be his name. The Lord is our righteousness." And so what Jeremiah is saying is he is prophetically proclaiming that God is going to bring one from the line of David who is going to impart righteousness, who's going to be the Messiah. And so when those couple of blind guys, we don't even know their names, when those couple of blind guys are on the side of the road and they hear Jesus is coming and they say, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us," what they are saying is that this is wild. The Son of David, they are referencing the covenant that God made to David, that God would establish his kingdom forever. And then we see in Jeremiah that coming king from the line of David would be the Messiah who would bring righteousness to his people. The Lord is our righteousness. So what those blind guys are proclaiming, as they're proclaiming that Jesus, Son of David, is that king that would bring us righteousness, who is the promised Messiah. That's what they're saying. These blind guys, I think that they knew more than just the fact that Jesus might be able to heal them. They knew more than just Jesus is this traveling, maybe he's a prophet, he's a good teacher, he's preaching these sermons. I think they understood Jesus as the promised Messiah who would bring righteousness to the people. That's the title they used when they called out to him. So Jesus is, in a sense, passing by. And they call out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." "Be quiet," the crowd yelled at them. But they only shouted louder, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." When Jesus heard them, he stopped and called, "What do you want me to do for you?" "Lord," they said, "we want to see." Jesus felt sorry for them and touched their eyes. Instantly they could see. Then they followed him. In other stories, when Jesus encounters people who need to be healed, often he will forgive them. Or he'll tell them, "Go and sin no more." There's different accounts where Jesus has done this. In this story here, the account we have, he just gives them their sight and they can see. And I think that, and this is me I'm just making, this is just an opinion. This is just an assumption that based on the title they used for Jesus, I think they'd already accepted Jesus as the Messiah. I think they already believed that he was the one to bring them righteousness. The Lord is our righteousness. I think they already believed he was the one. He's the promised Messiah. And so when I think Jesus approached them, I don't know that they needed to have Jesus forgive them of their sins. I think they already believed in Jesus, and they were already having the righteousness of Christ imparted to them. And that I'm making just an assumption there. Just based on the title they gave Jesus. They believed that he was more than just a preacher. It's when Jesus says, "What do you want me to do for you?" That's the question in the story. It's almost as if he's saying, "What more can I do for you beyond being your Messiah? Beyond being the one who will bring righteousness, what more can I do for you?" And he was asking it in a genuine way. What else can I do for you? I think that based on what title they gave Jesus, there may have been a recognition between Jesus and them that they weren't asking, "Are you the Messiah?" They were proclaiming, "You are the promised one. You are the one that God said to King David, I'm going to establish your kingdom forever." And that Jeremiah said that the righteous king who's going to come from David's line is going to impart his righteousness. He's going to be the Messiah. And so I think that they understood Jesus as that person. And I think Jesus understood that they understood that. And so he's asking them, "What do you want me to do for you?" But in essence, he's saying, what more can I do for you? I'm already your Messiah. I'm already the one to bring you forgiveness. I'm already the one to impart my righteousness to you. What more can I do? See, Jesus brings light where there is darkness. And I believe that these blind men, they lived in a literal darkness. They didn't have vision. But I think in a spiritual sense, I think they had already come to a spot where they knew Jesus as the Messiah. What more can I do for you? And they ask Jesus to do what seems obvious, like we want to see. And I'm confident that if I was blind, that would be in the front of my mind all the time. I want to see. And so Jesus removes their limitations and he gives them their vision. All of a sudden, I would imagine they would feel like less of a burden. All of a sudden, they're going to experience life in a different manner. See, Jesus is coming to us, and for some of us who have already come to him and believed in him for a while, he's already our Messiah. He has already imparted his righteousness to us. We come to him not needing to be forgiven again, but often we come to him living with limitations, and he's asking, "What can I do?" And he's asking, "What can I remove some of your limitations? Where are some areas of your life where you feel limited, where you feel burdened, where you feel like you're living out of a suitcase and there's a burden, you don't feel like you have enough, or you feel like you're carrying too much?" And Jesus is saying, what can I do for you? What more can I do for you? He wants to remove limitations. There are areas in your life where you are living limited, and Jesus is saying, I can remove those limitations. I can remove those burdens. I can take those things where we have limited ourselves, and I can open up your eyes, I can open up your mind, and you can see how big you can truly live. You can see with more hope and clarity how you can do this and accomplish that. I can remove the limitations. See, Jesus gives more. See, David approached Nathan and said, "Hey, I want to do something for my Lord." And Nathan comes back and says, "No, that's not your time. It's not for you to do. But here's what God is going to do." And God is giving, in that story, God gave David more than he ever expected or imagined. It literally like blew David's mind. And when you read The prayer that David prays after Nathan tells him that message, David is blown away by a God who would be so generous with him, by a God who would do so much for him. See, Jesus gives more. It's time for us to ask for more. It's time for us to pray for more. It's time for us to let hope lead the way instead of our limitations, instead of the things that are weighing us down, instead of feeling like I could do more, I could love more, I could give more, and this baggage I'm carrying, this suitcase it's so full of past hurts, it's so full of past disappointments. I don't want to put myself out there and be hurt or disappointed again. And Jesus says, I can do more. I can remove the limitations. In Matthew 11, I read this verse towards the beginning of the message. I want to read it to you again, this time from the Message. Are you tired? Worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. When Jesus asked the blind men, what can I do for you? What more can I do? They said, Jesus, remove our limitations. We want to be able to live freely and lightly without this burden. And Jesus did it. Mark 10:27 says, Jesus looked at them and said, with man this is impossible, but not with God. All things are possible with God. In the story when the blind men started crying out, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us, the response of the crowd was to tell them to be quiet. Like, guys, be quiet, the crowd yelled. But they only shouted louder. See, I believe they knew who Jesus was. And they knew that Jesus could remove their limitations. They knew that Jesus could heal them. They knew that Jesus was the Messiah who would bring righteousness. And so confidently, they shouted louder because they knew who Jesus was. They knew who Jesus is. And so the challenge today is to shout louder. What are your limitations? What are the burdens you're carrying? How heavy is your suitcase? Jesus is coming to us and asking us, what can I do for you? What more can I do? And the crowd around us, and sometimes that crowd is our own mind, is telling us to be quiet. But I'm challenging you to shout louder and ask Jesus to remove your limitations, to lighten your burden. And you know what? He can do it because we read a story where he did do it. So it's time for us to take our burden, to recognize it, but shout louder and ask Jesus to remove it. What can I do for you?